But the bottom line is, does this open it up for all the fetishes? Like, certainly now are we going to have furry movies?
I could do without that. And, insert...
We've already seen a brawny movie. Will we have a furry movie?
All right. By the way, my favorite part of the Vermont Teddy Bear ad is the description that this is not appropriate for children.
Really?
Because of small parts.
Small parts, not the Christian Grey I've heard about.
What are these signs of imminent societal collapse?
Or the sign, like we just talked about how depressed everybody was. And maybe this is why we need the Vermont Teddy Bear that has S&M gear. Because we need to lighten up. And maybe the first step towards that lightening up is a little teddy bear dressed in a suit with handcuffs and blindfolds. I wonder if you can get a whip optional. Because that, you guys,
this is a natural for the sequel to Mark Wahlberg's Ted movie.
God!
Oh, yes! He should totally be in a Ted 3.
Oh, God.
Yes, I love it.
Ted finds love. Ted finds love in Vermont.
I met a girl.
Nice.
She's a cashier.
Oh, I like to do to her something I call a dirty fuzzy.
Seth MacFarlane on line 2. My train of thought is now derailed.
What was it, Jim? Was it the handcuffs, the bear, or the idea that maybe we've just come up with the most brilliant new sequel movie
We should sell
ever?
this. We should sell this to Seth MacFarlane.
I'm a Dave. I feel like this is genius. We roll with it. And again, clearly, we know that we now live in a land of not so puritanical people.
Yeah.
Who, obviously I had some conversations with our followers and some listeners of the show and friends last night on Twitter and over some different social media. And I was fascinated to hear some of the answers and the ways that I'm going to talk about this over the next 2 shows. But the perspective in which people look at sex and how very different it is. Not just sex, the act, but the relationship part of it being, everything that goes along with it. The hurt, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it's so interesting because everybody thinks just like them.
Ah, okay. So you're polling our listeners.
Yes.
All right. But a quickly growing and expanding group.
Yes, we should definitely do a shout out on that. We've had our biggest week thus far. We're growing every single week. Over 2,000 people are listening to us every single week, so we cannot do anything but be humbled and thankful for that. But anyway, go on.
Well, here's the thing. Trying to figure out our demographic. I think you're saying assessing their views on relationships and such. You're saying we cover the spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Back in the old media days, they used to say that 25-54 wasn't a demographic. It was a small town.
Okay.
However, we seem to range. And the thing about it is philosophically, when you look at their approach to these things, it's really interesting because we talk about S&M and everyone immediately starts to blush or snicker or, whatever they don't want to admit to. But again, clearly we're using it and doing it. But here's the thing. In the context of marriage, is there anything wrong with it anyway?
It seems appropriate that during our discussion of sexuality, I would have a very pregnant pause. And I would observe. Nice. All right. And this may relate to a separate project I have coming up. If you have ever noticed about the types of things that get people really judgmental today, people are much less judgmental about what you do in the bedroom and things like that. But what is the one thing people have no problem scoffing at or sneering at? Large families. Like, oh my God, they got 5 kids. They got 6 kids.
Oh my God, they got
like 8. Thought about the environment.
Children.
We have now reached the point where the one thing in the bedroom that you can judge people about is procreation. That's the last controversial thing you can do in the bedroom.
How dare you?
Yeah, we've totally flipped and inverted, and that seems like a good point to wrap this segment. We'll be right back after this.
John, I look like something you give to your kid when you tell him grandma died.
Do that to me one more time.
Marcia, what happened?
Peter hit me on the nose with a football. I can't go to the dance like this.
Well, I'm sure it was an accident, sweetheart.
An eye for an eye. That's what Dad always says.
I never said that, honey.
Shut up! Time to teach Peter a lesson.
Marcia, eat a Snickers.
Why?
You get a little hostile when you're hungry. Better? Better.
Marcia.
Jan, this isn't about you.
It never is.
Heart in love, lost in
Welcome back to what is undoubtedly going to be remembered as an infamous episode of the Jim and Mickey Show. I am Jim Garrity, that is Mickey White, and it has been, once again, one of our fastest moving hours of our week.
As always, it always goes fast, and hopefully, at some point we might even be doing this a little more frequently. Certainly, with the help of many of our friends and fans that are out there in social media, spreading the word and sharing the links on SoundCloud. Thanks to John Grant and the 405 Media, we're now available on iTunes. And thanks to Taylor over at Vigilant Liberty, we are also now available on Spreaker. So you can go to SoundCloud, get the app for your phone, whether it be iPhone or Droid, or you can get it at one of those places. So thanks for everybody who's been listening. And again, we're up over multiple thousands each week. And let's just face it, you and I never saw that one coming.
No, actually, we did see it coming.
Well, we did, just not quite so fast. Exactly. We saw what we had. But one of the best part about this is my ability to interact with all of our listeners and our followers on Twitter. Jim kind of mentioned earlier that we use the hashtag TJams, but it's really important that you use that because it makes it easier for us to find the tweets that you're sending to us about the show or to each other. Kevin in Albuquerque, I always give out his address because he's got this phenomenal list. And if you're new to Twitter specifically, they do often put limits to the number of people that you can follow. So if you go and subscribe to this list, it does not affect your following count. Even if you've been set by limits by Twitter, you can still follow all the people who are on that TJams list without it affecting your numbers. And I put a lot out to these people as we talked about how varied our audience is. Put some questions out that we're going to get into today and a little more next week, definitely, about, sex, relationships, love, lust, marriage, all of those things. And I think one of the most interesting things I got, we talked about Valentine's Day a little bit, and people, there was some, I like it, I hate it. I think it's a good one to go ahead and embrace the hate. But the most interesting question I think that I posed, and it was the way that I posed it because I was trying to be clever, was wait until you're married or wait until your third date. When is sex appropriate?
Bit of a range there, unless you get married on the third date, and then it kind of simplifies.
Well, right, and I felt like that kind of puts you in two camps. Like, again, obviously, oversimplifying, but wait till you're married or after 3 dates, and then, of course, the hashtag being hashtag TJAMS, and then I also hashtagged it Twitter After Dark, because why not? And so I was fascinated in the responses to that because there were so many people so quick to respond, marriage, not until marriage. And then there were so many who were like, wait, are you serious? Like, is that a real question? And because, maybe not 3 dates, maybe 5. Mm-hmm. And then those women were being contacted by other followers like, hey, what are you doing on Friday? I can take you out this week. So,
and next Friday really and the Friday after that.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And it was just really interesting how quickly, you talked about earlier, how people, so quickly to respond. Well, isn't it always about perspective?
Yeah.
And it always comes back to that we've talked many times about how perspective affects everything. Yeah. And perception is reality. And when it comes to sex, it's no different. And here are these people, like I said, we have people that were, I'm saving myself for marriage, and good for you. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. But then, of course, we have the people who are like, I'd rather not say the number because that seems inappropriate when discussing the number of partners that they've had. Because one of the things that I asked them is what they thought the average number of partners, sexual partners, that is, that the average number that Americans have had. Do you know?
I'm going to say 6 or 7.
It's a different number for men and women. So for women...
Okay. I'm going to say women 4, men 7, I'm guessing.
Oh, my God. You, nailed that. Did you really not look that up?
No.
Oh, my God. You're pathetic.
I was literally...
How do you absorb this information and knowledge?
I am an encyclopedic knowledge.
Okay, so really Jim totally just ruined all my fun. But, yes, he was correct. Right. Women were 4 and men were 7. However, going with the American Pie theory, you flip that.
Okay.
Because men always lie over by 3, and women underlie by 3.
Is it one of the great lessons I remember from a professor of mine was you are not the average American. Was his lesson to all of us. Obviously, we're all in college. A lot of Americans never had the chance to go to college. I bet it's the same thing in terms of bedroom activities. That people believe that their personal experience is quasi-universal.
Yeah,
or at least the median. And whether if they've had lots of partners, well, then they think everybody has lots of partners. If they have, saved themselves for marriage, they think most people save themselves for marriage. And my suspicion is people tend to want to do that for wanting the affirmation that they're normal. Right? No one wants to be that much of an outlier of,
But
your number of
everybody
partners
lies on these things. So
Well,
you're
yeah,
an outlier anyway.
which raises the
If
question.
you tell the truth, you're the outlier.
Yeah, which may raise the question of the reliability of all those answers you were getting on Twitter.
Well,
Because,
but
hey,
again,
in a public forum, let's answer your most personal questions about your bedroom
Can't
activity.
wait.
I will tell you that some of our listeners were exceptionally open, and I appreciated their honesty and
Okay.
candor about, as I said, we did have people who jumped up and said marriage, but there were a lot of people who jumped up and said 3 dates. First time, if it's a good date. Things like that. So, again, I think that it's absolutely right. People see these things from their own personal perspective. But the reality is that there's a little freak in everybody.
Yeah, I'm thinking of one good friend of mine who this topic had come up, and it was a friend who I think very highly of, and could not, a young woman, but we were young then, and she had, was the kind of person I would never think badly of. And
We
her
were
point,
young then.
Yeah. And she said something like, you lose it, and it was, late college. I mean, really late college. I mean, really, really late college, suggesting that if it was like freshman year, I would think poorly of her. Like it was very reported that I know that was not just somewhere in the college years. It was right towards the end. I don't know if it was, right night before graduate, but like the interesting perception was that junior year, well, that's a slut. But as long as it's senior year,
Then it's
she
like-
was
and I've definitely heard, people, obviously there's the marriage deadline, and listeners, I want to hear this. Please tweet us and let us know. Put messages on Facebook.com/Jim and Mickey Show.
Jim, I want to
Let us know.
a count and pointer count before we close. That your proposal that everyone thinks everyone else's life is the same has validity, but I also think about everyone else thinks that everyone else is doing it way more than I am. That everyone thinks all the fun is being had by other people. But that one too is
I
kind
get
of
that,
universal.
yeah.
It's kind of universal. Everyone thinks everyone else is having sex. I'm the only one that isn't.
Whatever you're living is in that perfect sweet spot in between loserdom and puritanicalness and, rampant, disgusting, excessive bacchanalian orgies.
Isn't it basically,
you're in that very,
the idea is if you're not doing it the way I'm doing it, you're doing it wrong.
Well, yes, that's the other thing. Yes.
I mean, isn't that basically how it works? But yes, I definitely want to hear from you guys. Hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up on Facebook.com/Jim and Mickey Show. And let us know your take on this, because here's the thing. I think that America's freaks are out there. We're all a little freaky in our own way. But I think along with 50 Shades of Grey and some others, we are pulling it into, where honestly, I know that we've got aunts and grandmothers and moms and that are going to be going to see this movie together
I just want
in the same theater as you.
I want to remind our listeners that my co-host Mickey White really wants to hear from you. Me?
Not so much.
So we'll both be on Twitter. We both love to interact with our listeners, but you don't have to share every detail, is all I'm going to say.
Oh, but that's the fun part. Now, listen, here's the thing. What I want to hear is basically how you survive.
Modesty is okay on this show, too,
Nice. You keep that up on your side of the table, and I'll do what I want on my side of the table. But I just want to know what you've done in your relationship to make it last. What were the good points that you've made, the bad points, and is sex that big of a deal? Is bad sex a deal breaker? There's one for you to ponder while we get into next week. And again, I look forward to talking about this because our listeners, unlike Jim, are really open and they like sharing this information.
We at the Jim and Mickey Show want you to have a happy and enjoyable week until next time. But if you're really having that many problems in this aspect of your life, well, we hope it gets better. You don't have time. Discretion is okay, too. I'm Jim Garrity. That's Mickey White. And we'll be right here back a week, and God knows what will happen with you.